I bring you a very important video today. One that's complicated. I'm going to do my best to walk you through this. But we are truly going to solve a crime with evidence, stepping you through the whole thing that will get us the IRS, the banking department, the Attorney General's office. This is what they've been afraid of. There's multiple ways in. But I have told you in videos about the IRS. I have spoke to you about the forgery in the tax returns. I turned around, remember I said, I didn't look for a settlement of zero. I told you and I told the IRS, now didn't I? I want skulls. Skulls because I want them to be punished. They cannot keep doing this. So I'm going to tell you a story. We're going to step through this. It's a crime mystery, right? That we're going to solve, and we're going to solve together. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to change the state with it. Okay. So, as I talk to you about forgeries, remember I said Alex Walker, the Divine Millimat president, he was handling tax issues for me. I was the world champion in horse racing. But the IRS was trying to leverage me, saying it was a hobby. Except for I was the world champion. So if it was a hobby for me, it would have been a hobby for the rest of the world. Right, so it really wasn't that. It was because of FRM. It was because of the leveraging me. And quite frankly, stealing 10 million. They've been known to do that. But let's keep going. You know how it starts? It starts with Shaheen. You see here? Now there's articles. There's another one. There's multiple articles about Jean Shaheen targeting her enemies with the IRS. Right. Shaheen knew that I had her husband as an extortion on a $100,000 check and her involvement in the Ponzi scheme of FRM. And they both knew if that was investigated, that it would open up the corruption in the banking department with not only the protection of the Ponzi scheme FRM, but what we've later found out, and even in the last few months, is that the protection of the drug launderers. They're putting their money in Prima Bank. They're putting their money in Grand State Credit Union. They're protected by the banking department, which is Perlo. Listen, when we made this accusation a few weeks ago, Perlo resigned. Right, gone. You see in the title, it says vacant. He didn't say he wasn't guilty. He left. You know something? Every time we point to someone who's corrupt and we say he did it, they leave. Let's not forget, Alex Walker, Divine Millimat president, who was in charge of this tax operation, he left too. Only to steal more to Manchester Memorial Hospital. You know, like your futures. But I'm going to have you follow along now, okay? The forged tax returns were done because the DRA, which is controlled by the state, Department of Revenue Administration, this is New Hampshire taxes, where I was a world champion and in business, the IRS didn't call it a hobby. See? That was Shaheen trying to get paid and have me shut up. So what they did was, these accountants, Walker, Schwartz, to leverage me, they put it on my K-1. Now the K-1 is an indicator of income rather than expenses for the business. The IRS, no. The state, yes. Walker was using the DRA criminally to leverage me for my silence on FRM and the corruption in the courts that I caught. Right? That's how they work. But let's prove it now. Okay. So, what I had Walker was doing that I didn't know is that he sent to the IRS taxpayer advocate and said in June of 11, and you'll see from the taxpayer advocate that they're saying that they apologize for the timing issues that arose from preventing an IRS from processing the original form. Their mistake. But guess what? You see this? June of 11? I never saw this. You know why? I had fired them in May. But then they asked me for my release for them. Here it is right here. This is Walker sending an email to Hyder. who had then found out working for them. He leveraged him with his father working as an attorney illegally. They own you. Remember, Walker's, if you notice my sign, his expertise is extortion. That's exactly what he did here. So this here is asking a full release from all claims raised on these issues of taxes or any criminality. Do you know what he was doing? Having a release. At the same time, never telling me that he already has the apologies of the IRS for the mistake that he and Larry Schwartz made. On purpose to leverage me. All right, you following? They're building leverage to do this. To turn and have me sign a release, not to tell you the criminality that goes on in this state. More proof? Well, guess what happened? Remember I showed you just a couple days ago. I showed you that we got our Department of Justice complaints. We got 74 of them in a day. And I told you then, it means we're forcing them to move. I am telling you, it just might be this piece that's forcing them. Proof? Turns out, the same day, I had another Department of Justice receipt come over. There was something a little unusual about this one, though. Jonathan Breen, my attorney. Now, Breen hasn't worked for me since January of 14. We're talking 2 years. Is there a reason I'm getting a receipt for this tax complaint now after 2 years to an attorney that I fired 2 years ago? And you know what? Turns out, if you look at all the other 74, the ID number is different than this one. This just got moved to the tax division. Yeah, like the other day. It means it is working. They're covering their bases. They're trying to cover up the criminality of Shaheen with the IRS, the leverage that she created with Walker, with the Department of Revenue to shut me up. Let's keep going. So now, the people who were involved with Walker were Tim Powell of the IRS. Now, you know what we have for Tim Powell of the IRS? We turned around and had a release done. Let's meet the people. Lorraine Colby of the IRS, Tim Powell of the IRS, and we can't forget this guy, Patrick Dillon. My personal favorite suddenly, and I'll explain. Right, Patrick? We know you're watching. Okay, so this is a relief to the IRS. Remember now, all I wanted was skulls, so this is my process of getting it. On behalf of Mr. Gill, this is Breen, by the way, right? The same guy 2 years later who gets the receipt from the Department of Justice when I've already fired him 2 years ago. And it says here that it'll be, if you are honest and truthful and forthcoming about the knowledge of the corruption in this state, we'd be willing to give you a release of all and any potential claims against you on behalf of myself and mortgage specialists. We would go on and be willing to go to the federal authorities on your behalf to seek immunity. I arrest Tim Powell. He was supposed to retire in 11. That's what he told me. Guess what? He's still around. Lorraine Colby, she was the auditor. We gave her the same release. Now, we haven't heard from anybody since until the same, now I want you to hear this. The same day we get the letter from the Department of Justice, after 2 years, and when I called them, they finally moved it to the criminal division tax. So one guy left, the guy Dillon. He walks an envelope. You notice it's not mailed. You know why it's not mailed? Mail fraud. Right. Then he turns around and asks, he is 12, 13, and 14. Haven't submitted them. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know any money. In fact, they owe me money. I lost millions. Okay? But if I closed them, they would have closed the accounts with the forgeries. Right. The thing with the DRA, they go to jail. Shaheen goes to jail. Walker goes to jail. The Banking Commission goes to jail. You see the importance? This is where it gets insidious and interesting at the same time. So, the same day after 2 years, Dillon, as a summons meeting with me, regarding 12, 13, and 14. What happened to the forgeries? Guess what? You remember we're saying we're sending all our criminal information to Tom Morley, a TIDCA, the criminal division of the IRS. So if you find something criminal within the IRS, you would report it to TIDCA. And Tom Morley, except for after these years of giving everything to Tom Morley and calling Tom Morley a miserable coward multiple times. Right, Tom? So think about this. Why is Dylan coming out of the woods in 6 years? Why if all of a sudden he's not asking about 10 and 11, but these? Guess what? You know what we found out? That my assistant, Lisa Tracy, that I said was corrupt, lined us up with a CPA. Right. You know what his name was? You'll never guess. Morley. I'll bet you our boy Tom Morley has a brother named Curtis Morley. Right. That's a coincidence. And they only work about 10 miles apart. Wow. It's like having two jackpots, in seconds. So, do you know what this ray of sunshine did? Signed my name again. Said he had power of attorney. And they settled the cases. I wanted skulls. We didn't get skulls, did we? Not yet. So, let's go again. The criminal investigator Morley. My accountant turns out to be, I'll bet you, his brother. His name is Morley. And they signed my name and they put that into the taxes so I couldn't close those out, right? And then they think they're going to leverage me? Listen, good luck. I don't get scared, I don't get leveraged, and I get threatened. I get even. And then some. So we're going to check Morley. Now, there's no question about this. I just showed you how they covered up even with the DRA, for instance. Now, Green. So remember now, Justice Department opens up the case after 2 years from Breen, my attorney, and I have Dylan knock on the door when I wasn't there. Too bad now, it ain't bad. Now, Breen with the Department of Justice Revenue. He's asking them for a release. Kate Casares to say, if you give us this information, we'll give you a release. The DRA is still open. Do you remember what the banking department would follow the head? They tried to, and I showed you, they were actually giving testimony on redacted paper, meaning it was just blank. The reason what it was they were trying to turn the classification of the DRA notes, meaning this is an operation not only in banking, but run by Richard Head and Foster at the AG's office, who previously worked for AOT, who AOT and McLean are protecting the banking commission because of drug laundering. This gets us into all of it. See? We just broke the code. And everything is in writing. There is no other explanations. Now, when we turned around and called them, after 3 years later, we get Janet Rumsford again. Do you think she's only the tax advocate of the IRS, the only one in the country? If we call in 3 years, we get the same one? Try that. But yet we did. And then when Miss Rumsford was questioned, let me read what she said. She indicated she was unable to find Mike's records on the previous case. And she said that Mr. Leahy, the Treasurer and Inspector General, declined to meet with her and Mike. Conflicting interests. Mr. Leahy had meeting personally with Mike. She could not find her notes, but the meeting was supposed to be around Christmas. Miss Rumsford back again to inquire, who exactly, Miss Rumsford, is Mr. Leahy? Now you're saying he's the Inspector General of the IRS. Turns, she said, well, I'm not sure that's really even his name. It's right here. We'll post the information. You don't know the Inspector General's name? It was all a setup and a cover-up. Here's Tom Morley of the TIDCA. What's the bet his brother forged my name and corrupted those tax returns, and now they're trying to close the door because they know they get you this. Now let me just finish what we get, all right? You get the Department of Revenue Administration that is stealing from you. You get Walker, who's running the Catholic Memorial Hospital. He's behind. He sits on the board of the New Hope Treatment Center. He's protecting the drug dealers. He's protecting the banking department. That was his job, right? That's all this incrimination is, to leverage me for me not to tell you this corruption. I'm still here. Does that not give you the evidence that what I'm telling you is true? Please, consider what I've just said. Understand we bring all these people to justice. I mean, Al Capone went that way. Why can't we all send them out the door that way? These are your drug dealers. This is the organization that I told you is a single organization. We break it here, I'm telling you, step at a time. The Department of Justice believes this can be done. Why do you think I got those receipts of those complaints? If they didn't, and they haven't all this time, didn't think we could win, they wouldn't be covering their butts now, would they? And that's exactly what we're doing. So I'm telling you right now, we cannot miss this opportunity to take this home. Thank you.